Hey, this is Terratoots with a quick tutorial on creating cliffs in Terragen 4. There are several different methods for creating cliffs. Today, we'll cover a relatively straightforward one that can be adapted to multiple situations. We'll start out in the default scene, where we'll bring down the scale of the default fractal terrain and reduce the displacement. This terrain will eventually end up forming the top of our cliff, and we don't want it getting too crazy for now. We'll also add some offset to the displacement. This is going to end up forming the bulk of our cliff face. Next, we'll open up the simple shape shader that comes with the default scene. Normally, this shader acts as a mask and flattens out the terrain around the camera position. But now, we're going to invert it so that it allows a circle of terrain to press through. We'll stretch it out into a bit more of an ellipse and sharpen up the edge a bit, while still leaving it pretty soft. Keeping a smooth edge now is very important for good lateral displacement later. Let's go ahead and pull our camera back to see what we have so far. Next, we'll add a twist and shear shader, which is going to let us straighten our cliff to vertical. I found that even some overhang here can lead to really nice outcrop shapes later on. Because the cliff is facing in the negative z direction, we need to change the lean direction to negative z, and let's dial that back quite a bit. Now that we have the basic shape of our cliff, we're almost ready to start lateral displacement, or displacement horizontally from the cliff face. Before we do, I'm going to add a compute normal node, which will update the normals of the polygons on the vertical surface, which are obviously much different than when we started. This will increase our render time a little bit, but will improve the horizontal displacement. We'll start off the lateral displacement with a foundation of some large-scale Voronoi shapes. The main node will be a Voronoi 3D diff scaler, which will feed with a get position node. I'll set the scale and random seed with the same constant scaler, though you can use different values if desired. Next, we'll create a new surface layer and connect the Voronoi group to the displacement input. This will allow us to set the displacement to lateral only and give it a little bit of breakup. Make sure to uncheck the Only Breakup Color button. We'll follow the Voronoi with some medium-scale bulges or outcroppings. These will be created with a Power Fractal shader, stretched a bit to the sides. We'll enable displacement at the same scale as the main features. To keep the displacement on the cliff, let's mask the power fractal with a distribution shader and limit the minimum altitude using the final position as the altitude key. To keep this displacement horizontal, pass it into the Z port of a redirect shader. Next, we're going to add a couple of strata layers, which will add some cool effects with our overhanging outcrops. The first layer will be pretty sharp with a hard layer steepness of 1. The second layer will be at a slightly different angle and will be a bit softer with more plateau buildup. We'll mask both strata shaders using the same distribution shader as the outcrops. We've made some pretty significant changes to the geometry, so at this point we'll throw a compute terrain node in. Next, I'm going to add some tension cracks using the nice Cracks and Tension Fractures clip by Wasasquatch, which can be found on the Terragen file sharing forum. This will create a network of cracks across the rock face and really increase the realism. I'm going to set this as a child to a surface layer so that I can limit the minimum altitude. Though we'll turn off the fractal breakup here. Then, I'm going to create another copy of the whole thing at a smaller scale. You can change the scale of the cracks by coming into the node group and changing the master scale value at the top here. We'll also reduce the displacement a bit. We'll finish off with one more fine detail pass at a very small scale to give some surface roughness. You could probably even do another intermediate surface finish if you'd like here. There's obviously a lot of possible variations on this theme, with different varieties of lateral displacement and shapes that are possible, and a lot of room to explore with different scales and displacement values, not to mention texturing and shaders. To give you some ideas, I've created 2 different scenes with this same basic setup, and posted the scene files to the Terragen file sharing forum. The first is a lakeside cliff with some gray shaders. The second is a more desert, dark cliff scene. The links are in the description below, and I hope you find them useful.